Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian. I'm here with Allison, and this is Maintaining Frame number 160. Why can't we all just get along?
Why can't
we're
we,
going to
Brian?
be. What was that?
I said, why can't we all get along?
Yeah. So we're going to be reacting to a video.
No,
I guess.
it's a Psychology Today article.
Oh, not this video?
Not the video. No, I apologize. I put it through later, like what we were going to react to, but I guess it didn't go through. I'll do it again.
No, you sent. I got the link to the article too, but I thought they were related things.
They probably are, but I figure we could start with the call for Psychology Today to the manosphere to just stop doing what you're doing and become feminist. So
yeah, wait, no, are you serious? I'm kidding.
Yes, I'm serious. So that's how we're going to solve the divide between the sexes, for men to concede the point
please
entirely.
just surrender. Stop exposing our hypocrisy and criticizing us, and just join us, and then everything will be fine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I figured we could take a look at that first before we get it. I have like a little. I've been again gathering some nuts related to this topic, to look at what the femosphere is up to lately. Because I'm just going to start calling them. We have the manosphere. I'm going to call it the femosphere. So the femosphere is UN, The Economist, pretty much all NGOs related to gender-based issues and all of that stuff. So we'll read the Psychology Today article, which is basically telling the manosphere to shut up and toe the line. Let's be honest. And I'll tell you why that is. We'll deconstruct it. And then we'll look at the current femosphere initiatives.
It's because
to bring about so-called equality. Sorry, what did you say, Brian?
I said it's because they're losing. That's why.
So yeah, it's because
they're losing because they are wrong, and everyone knows they're wrong, and everybody's figuring this out.
Yeah,
like that's what this is. Not this is panic. That's all it is. They're panicked, and they're like, the power we have over all of society is slipping through our fingers, and it started with men. In particular with young men, and they're like, oh no, if we lose the men, we may lose the women, because the women may follow. So
for once, yeah. All right, so let's get into it. Oh wait, let me do the things. If you want to send us a message at any point throughout the show, it's really appreciated for you to send us messages. You can do so at feedthebadger.com/justthetip. That's feedthebadger.com/justthetip. Hopefully feedthebadger.com will become relevant to your interests in the future as well. So that's where you can send us a message. Very best way for you to send us a message, and best way for you to tip us. And if you would like to support the show without sending a message, without that hassle, you can do so at feedthebadger.com/support. And if you'd like to join our community, badgernation.online. Welcome to the newest member, hopefully Itsy Bitsy Huntsman. She has joined our community as a result of talking to her, so an individual in our community, and hopefully she'll have a good time here. She's expressed an interest in being part of the writers chat, which we do quite often. We talk about storytelling, because storytelling is really essential to how we understand ourselves in our society. So if you want to join us in all of our activities, it's badgernation.online. And what's the last one? Oh yeah, you can subscribe. Feedthebadger.com/subscribe. All right. And if you absolutely are completely lazy, you can become a member on YouTube too, or Patreon us. All right. I think that's all the things. Like, that's an excessive number of things to think about. It's all in the low bar if you're interested.
Number of things.
It's a decent number. It's a substantial. Oh, okay. So I'm having an issue with my camera.
Is your camera frozen again?
Yeah, it looks like it.
It's frozen. Yep.
I'm an old hat at this now. Okay, this should all right, let's get this. No, it won't be yet. I have to reset it. And then I have to.
Okay, you're good now.
I have to zoom it.
You're good now.
Yeah, I know I'm good. I just need to zoom in a little bit so you can actually see me. I'll put it here. we're okay, there we go. We're good. I'm good.
All right. So we're going to get into the article.
Yep.
All right. Should I be the one? Should I read it?
Yeah, sure.
All
I
right.
think they prefer your dulcet tones to my squeaky squirrel voice.
All right. So this is from Psychology Today, and it is written by Nafiz Alam, PhD. Apparently, he works in pop culture mental health, which completely makes him absolutely relevant and the expert on the topic.
Mm-hmm.
And the title is Feminism and the Manosphere Beyond the Gender Divide. How feminism and the manosphere reflect modern gender tensions. Okay, can I make a prediction about this? I haven't read this article.
You read it? Well, then you
no, I have not. I have not.
Okay.
I have not read this article. Don't know anything about it. I just too busy this morning. So I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that this is going to be predictable, and because they always do the same thing, they don't really have like a new script. They haven't figured one out yet, because ultimately it's all about rhetoric and how their words make you feel. So the most charitable interpretation of the manosphere, the most charitable, is going to be something along the lines of the manosphere is the mirror image of the worst aspects of feminism. So like it is I haven't read it, but I'm guessing that the manosphere is just extremely misinformed, because they're under the delusional idea that feminism is not actually just about equality. And if they knew that it was just about equality, they'd be feminists.
I think you're getting really close to what's going on in this. There might be a few tweaks here and there.
Well, that's okay. We should read the article anyway, but
before we do, I want to remind everyone that feminist academics' premise is that men use rape and domestic violence to uphold their privileges in patriarchy. Now, before we get into this article, I just want to point that out, because that is the kind of rhetoric you direct at something you want to destroy. So from the very start, first principles, feminist first principles, and again, they have never proven this. They've attempted to cook the books to make it seem like it's true. But feminist first principles is that men's relationship to women is one of using extreme violence to enact their privileges, to enforce their privileges. That's the feminist position. And it resembles the position of every society. They assume this narrative, they take on this narrative when they want to destroy the thing they are targeting this narrative at. So you would say this narrative, if you want to go kill tribe B, you would say things like, they are a threat, they're going to rape and torture our women. So we go and we kill tribe B. You want to enslave tribe C, they're a threat to raping and beating our women unless we enslave them. You want to destroy something, it promotes raping and beating our women. So this is like the ultimate command threat narrative. And feminists have targeted this at men. And this is first principles. This is like, I got into a conversation with Michael Flood on Twitter, and I pointed when someone was saying that feminism is indistinguishable from Nazism towards Jews, he pushed back on that, and I pointed this out. And then he didn't say, oh, we don't do that, because they do. Feminists do. Feminists 100%. Feminists in academia promote the idea that men use rape and domestic violence to oppress women. He didn't push back on that part. He pushed back on saying that's like Nazi propaganda towards the Jews. And yet it 100% is, because one of the first things that they did was present Jewish people as being criminals, as being a sexual threat to Aryan women and children, as being desiring to torture and disenfranchise Aryan women and children. Now, be it as it may, what you think of that, this is how you target a group of people for destruction. So 100%, feminism has borrowed from war propaganda in the past, has borrowed from the narratives around groups of people you want to target and remove from society, and directed that at men. So, and they want to say there is some form, we can find a common ground with that. What's the common ground? Like, how do you find common ground with that? But I just wanted to point that out. Let's find out. Let's find
All
out
right,
how
let's
psychology
find
today.
out.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to skip the key points. In recent decades, we've witnessed an increasing polarization in discourse about gender roles, rights, and relationships. On one side stands feminism, with its various waves and branches advocating for women's equality. On the other side has emerged what's commonly called the manosphere, a collection of online communities focused on men's issues, sometimes characterized by anti-feminist statements. Understanding how these what?
Women's equality. Okay.
Yeah, it's no, he's poisoning the well right off the bat because
poisoning the well right off the bat.
Mhm.
No,
Well, there's a lot
no
of ways he's doing it. There's a lot
no
of ways he's doing
recognition
it.
of what academic feminists, and by extension, all feminists actually are promoting. It's just equality, folks. Just like Nazism was just about saving Germany.
Well, let's
there's
break down this paragraph, okay?
Yeah.
So, all right. On one side stands feminism with its various waves and branches. So when he says waves and branches, this is going to give him plausible deniability. So if you point out anything crazy that feminists believe, he gets to say, "Oh, well, that's probably wave X or branch Y." So it's not feminism. It's just this crazy fringe thing over here. So that's why this is this is them planting the seeds. They're getting ready to have the conversation, and they're setting up the minefield. Okay. So first off, it's got all these branches. It's kind of all over the place. Who knows what it really means? And then it says advocating for women's equality. So for sure, it believes that. For sure. Equality for sure. For sure. Across the board, no matter what branch or wave it is, it's all about equality. But if you mention anything that actually flies in the face of that, that contradicts equality in some way, then he gets to say, no, that's not feminism. That's a branch. That's a wave. That's something else. That's out there in the fairy dust. On the other side has emerged what's commonly known as manosphere, a collection of online communities focused on men's issues, sometimes characterized by anti-feminist statements. When he's already said that feminism for sure advocates for women's equality, so when he says anti-feminist, he means anti-equality, which of course, being anti-equality is bad, according to the guy who wrote this. When I would just say, well, there is no such thing as equality. It's just about like people as they are. And that's kind of like a thing we have to wrestle with. But I'm just saying that's the first paragraph right off the bat, poisoning the well, setting up the traps and all of that. So
Good point. Good point. They're already making the framework. So it's just about women's equality. Of course, what they mean is at least equality for women. And if it's supremacy for women, that's counted as equality. As we'll find out when we look at the supplementary material. When we look at the femosphere's actions. Let's keep going.
Understanding how these movements relate to each other and how they might find common ground requires examining their origins, their legitimate concerns, and the ways their more extreme elements have contributed to an increasingly divisive conversation. Now, this also, I believe, makes another mistake. It makes a mistake of assuming that you have like two armies or two tribes or two, teams, and they're equal in their strength, and they have the same amount of leverage and the same amount of political power and the same amount of funding, and then you're figuring out where they line up in that way, which is just not true. As feminism obviously like occupies like all the institutions, it's in the zeitgeist of the Western world and the Eastern world. It's global, it's everywhere. Everyone presumes it like just by default, and anything that goes against that, like is basically anathema to it. It is the enemy of it. While as the manosphere is just like, pockets of online communities. Who knows? Like if it definitely doesn't have any political influence. It doesn't have lobbying power. It doesn't have governments under its heel. It doesn't get like billions of dollars from three-letter agencies. So
it's starting to, because men are starting to realize that they need to advocate for their own interests.
Yeah, but they don't have. But they don't. It's still nowhere near where feminism is. Feminism is basically a business. I mean, yeah.
The manosphere only maybe has clout because it's convinced the voters, male voters, that they need to advocate for their interests. And the only thing that really the I would say, I don't want to say the left, but like the statists really have is this idea that if men toe the line, they'll get women. And I think men are waking up to the bullshit of that, like that they'll appeal to women and women will like them, because you see a lot of these articles of, you know, a statist woman says, I won't have sex with men until they agree with statism, you know. And I'm calling it statist because the thing that the dividing line seems to be whether or not you're justifying government debt, taking out debt that we have to labor to pay the interest on.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Next paragraph, the evolution of modern gender discourse. Modern feminism's journey from early suffrage movements to contemporary intersectional approaches has transformed society in profound ways. The second wave of feminism in the 1960s and 70s brought issues like workplace inequality, reproductive rights, and domestic violence into public discourse. These movements achieved significant legal and cultural victories that fundamentally changed women's opportunities and social positions. So this is more arguments that are being made that are sort of like, let's say, beyond reproach.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like they're like, well, you can't criticize, and then he lists like suffrage and workplace inequality, reproductive rights, and domestic violence.
Mm-hmm. Well, they've started like the first principles. Instead of the first principles, they're allowing feminism to use their slogan and say, and uncritically accept feminist slogan as their genuine first principle, right? That they are for women's equality. I noticed that, you know, men's equality is not even in the picture, but regardless, they are for women's equality, which means that ultimately feminists, if they see any situation where women are more than equal, they're superior, that's fine, because it's not a situation of women's inequality. So everything has to be pushed up into women being in a better position than men. Fine, that's their advocacy. They're fairly open about it. I'm not sure why people think that there's a common ground to be found between advocates who think that everything should be focused on women's equality and never look at the situation for men, because that's right in there. So that first principle is actually, when you poke it, when you look into it, pretty corrupt already. It's basically all we have to care about is the situation for women. All we have to care about is the equality for women. We're just going to assume. We're never actually going to look at the situation for men. We're just going to assume it's better than women, so we can continue to completely focus our efforts on improving women's equality everywhere and never look at men's. So right from the start, that although that first principle seems benign, it isn't. It is already corrupted. And then when you go in, and that is feminism's best face. You know, it's feminism's best face is already sort of horrifying when you think about it. Then when you get into it, when you get into what academic feminists are trying to prove or assert, that men use rape and domestic violence to subjugate women. And if you want the proof of that, I will find it for you, and I will read it out. I don't have it right at this moment.
Is it that document that
I keep posting?
That text thing that you sent me?
No, that's just the additional links. All right. Okay. So feminists are dominant in the field when it comes to getting funding and recognition for surviving sexual violence and domestic assault. As McPhail confesses in his paper, feminist theoretical perspectives are dominant in the field of domestic violence and sexual assault, and feminist theoretical perspectives focus on the link between men's violence against women and patriarchal structures of power, considering that male violence against women is both the result of historical differences in the power between men and women and a tactic for maintaining women's subordination. That's McPhail et al. 2007, which is the evolving feminist perspective on intimate partner violence. It sets out the feminist framework for how patriarchy is maintained. I mean, there are other softer things that they include, but ultimately, everything comes down to violence for them. So men use rape and domestic violence to uphold patriarchy. And we're supposed to find common ground with that. We're supposed to find, and the nice way to put it is that we always have to focus on women because men are evil and they have these incredible powers to always subjugate women. So we don't look at the situation for men because we know they're evil and we know they have tremendous power. So we only look at the situation for women. So, and that's the nice phase. That's the only, we're about women's equality, not demonizing men.
That's the most charitable way to
Yeah.
look at it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to break down this paragraph too. So when
Okay,
they
go
say,
ahead.
again, like I say, modern feminism's journey from early suffrage movements. So that right there is suggesting that, right off the bat, suffrage is you can't criticize it. Like, it's obviously good, period. Like, there's no nuance. It's like history starts with women being oppressed and then getting the vote and by the skin of their teeth. And there's no context. There's no story around that. There's no idea that like mostly women were against it, and all of the things that were being considered. No, none of that matters because suffrage was just good and you can't criticize that, full stop. Okay.
Well, you can't
So
even
when
look
they
at the
put that in there,
historical
they're
perspective.
saying you can't criticize this because this is just good. Okay. Now we're going to move on to the other things that are just good that you can't criticize. So when they say the second wave of feminism in the 1960s and 70s brought issues like workplace inequality. So workplace inequality, I'm pretty sure that, first of all, we'd have to ask the question, was it really unequal to begin with, like ever? Is that even a thing that was a problem, or was that just something that was said to be a problem that we are just supposed to accept again, whole cloth without challenging? And if it is something that supposedly the second wave, addressed, then why are women still complaining about it today? That means that it's either like never had the intention of fixing it, or it's completely ineffectual and couldn't have fixed it, which means the 60s and 70s second wave couldn't take credit for something it didn't do, right? So there's that. Reproductive rights, again, what does that even mean? You're using this is very slippery language, because what one person's reproductive rights is somebody else's baby murder. Depending on how you look at it, that's the truth. And also, even if we left it in the realm of reproductive rights, we're still not talking about them in men's context. Like, women got reproductive rights, whatever that means, but men did not. They have no choices. And even to this day, feminists will defend that. They'll say, well, they made a choice when they had sex with them, which means only men get that agency and women don't, because if they get knocked up, it's not their fault, right? And then domestic violence, again, this is another very misleading thing to put in there, because men also suffer domestic violence, and women, not only are they the initiators of domestic violence, but they're the champions of domestic violence if you look at lesbian relationships. So when you say this is an issue, you are specifically saying this is something that men do to women, which again, the second wave feminist movement can't take credit for, because apparently it's still something that feminism is trying to address.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, well, I think we should
and last thing, then it says these movements achieved significant legal and cultural victories, but they didn't, because none of these things have changed in the eyes of feminists. So they didn't. Like, your second wavers are losers by your logic.
Yeah, we're still living in the worst patriarchy ever. The patriarchy has only gotten worse, guys, as a result of these feminist initiatives. And I wanted to say, even if you regard women voting as a positive or a neutral, the history around that is so distorted. Feminists didn't get women the vote. Male lawmakers did, and probably in conjunction with the suffragists. And it actually, honestly, when, for example, the UK, which is one I've studied a bit more, when they decided to do universal suffrage, it was a result of men's sacrifice in World War I. And then they couldn't argue that women didn't deserve the vote if they're going to give it all to men. Like, all men, they couldn't say, well, let's just keep women not having the vote. So it was like men's sacrifice in World War I got women the vote as well as themselves. It's like and again, like what Brian just alluded to, the whole argument between the vote was not women versus men. It was a majority of women who didn't want women to have the vote, and a majority of men who did. Like, it's completely distorted. So even if you think it's neutral or good, at least know the facts about how it happened. All right, let's I'm terrible, but we should try to maybe read a whole section and then speak.
This is kind of long. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll try not to stop, but just like pay attention to the way
I
this is
will
worded.
also try not to stop.
That's all I'm asking, that you guys that are watching this be very attentive to the way this article is being written, because there's a lot of manipulation happening as I read it. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, as feminism evolved and gained cultural influences, some men began to feel that their own challenges and perspectives were being overlooked. The manosphere emerged primarily in online spaces during the early 2000s, encompassing diverse communities, from men's rights activists concerned with issues like family court biases and male suicide rates, to more controversial groups promoting traditional masculinity or expressing outright misogyny.
Are we going
Is it
to
controversial to promote traditional masculinity? That's controversial.
Okay, and are we going to go over all of the horrific crap that feminists were beaking off about on? I mean, not just the basic premise of feminism, which is equality for me and not for thee, and that's the nice face. The ugly face is equality for me and not for thee, because you men are demons, and you don't. If we give you anything, then we're basically giving succor to Satan. But regardless, are we going to go into all of the subgroups of feminists that take that to its logical conclusion of eradicating men? And they're not even subgroups hidden on the internet. You can find them on talk shows and in parliament and in NGOs, just beaking off about this horrific crap with nobody saying, hey, but you know, there might have been subgroups of misogynists on the internet. Incidentally, I've been in a lot of during that time, I was in a lot of men's issues forums. Yeah, there was no let's remove women down to 10% of the population, or have it so that you put them in libraries. And this is a feminist thing. So I'll say it the feminist way, so I'm not taken out of context. There was a feminist that asserted that men should be reduced down to 10% of the population, and the remaining men should be installed in like man libraries where women could check them out for a night and then return them. And I have never heard that from any group of men yet.
Sounds like a dystopian young adult novel. Okay. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to keep going. But traditional masculinity being seen as fringe is kind of wild, but makes sense. Parallel grievances and reactive formation. While it might be tempting to view feminism as having birthed the manosphere in a simple cause-effect relationship, the reality is more complex. It's nuanced, guys. Both movements respond to genuine social pressures, though in different ways and from different perspectives. Michael Kimmel, sociologist and author of Angry White Men, which a title that this totally should get you wanting to read, observes, what we're seeing isn't simply reactionary politics, but competing responses to rapid social change. Both movements contain legitimate grievances about how gender expectations can harm individuals.
Michael Kimmel, that's a name we haven't heard for a while.
Oh, no, I hear it every so often. Yeah.
Wasn't he discredited because he did something?
Supposedly, but I guess not. His book is still out there. Like, it doesn't really matter, right? Like,
yeah, no.
if you, like, what's her name? Naomi Wolf. She's, like, highly discredited, too, but I bet her feminist books are still, like, in colleges and circulating in commie libraries everywhere, so.
Yep. Okay, continue.
Okay. So
I actually confronted him during one of the
I know we had a screening of the Red Pill.
Yeah, I actually called him out on some of his crap.
Yeah.
But
remember, he was the guy that was involved with the film The Mass You Live In, which we
no, that was Michael Flood, I believe, not Michael.
No, it was both of them. It was both of them.
Both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Little Nestor rats.
It was Michael Flood, Michael Kimmel, and there was another guy, one of the Good Men Project guys, I think. But anyway, so both movements contain legitimate grievances about how gender expectations can harm individuals. Some key parallels in these movements include, number one, both respond to perceived injustices and systemic biases. Number two, both contain moderate and extreme elements. Number three, both address genuine difficulties faced by their respective genders. And number four, both sometimes define themselves in opposition to the other. The manosphere didn't emerge simply as a reaction against feminism, but rather as a part of a broader response to changing gender dynamics, economic pressures, and cultural shifts that have transformed traditional masculinity.
So both sometimes define themselves in opposition to the other. Okay, feminism from the start defines itself in opposition to men. Equality is
not to the manosphere.
Yeah,
To
equality. Men. Yeah, not to the manosphere. Equality is something that men withhold from women, which is why we don't have to actually look at situations where men are not equal, because they're the ones in power and withholding equality from women. So if they have a problem, I mean, it's there. They have the power to fix it. This is how this entire narrative, this command and control narrative, feminist command and control narrative, completely negates any ability to address or recognize men's issues. And that's just the nice face. That's just the we advocate for women's equality face. The ugly face, I mean, that's just the face of discrimination, and who cares about men? The ugly face is the active demonization of men with narratives like men use rape and domestic violence to subjugate women. And I invite anyone who is like, well, that sort of makes sense. Do you have a son? Are you teaching him to use rape and domestic violence to subjugate women? If the answer is no, why do you think anyone is doing that? Why did you ever agree to this nonsense? And it is nonsense. It's unproven nonsense. Feminists never had to prove anything that they assert. Nothing. None of this is proven. It's all just bullshit they pulled out of their ass. Like, I could just imagine these feminists sitting in a circle. How do we frame men as evil? And they're like, they use beatings and rapes to evolve the society. And it's like, and nobody said, wait, that sounds like either you have a fetish or you just hate men, and that neither of which makes good scholarship. Nobody. No, they just let them sit in their wide open space and say whatever they wanted with no oversight, no genuine peer review, no actual calls to scientific rigor. They just sat there and did whatever they wanted, said whatever they wanted, promoted whatever they wanted, and everybody had to swallow it. And finally, people are stepping up and saying, no. And honestly, most of the people who are 100% lasering in on the bullshit that feminism has pumped out since it was inception are small channels like ours that are heavily censored or heavily pushed away. I mean, we're not censored because we, say all the bad words, all of them, except maybe one or two. And so the algorithm doesn't like us, but the algorithm also doesn't like us because feminist groups have told YouTube, make the algorithm not like them. And we have receipts on that. And also we're targeted by Homeland Security. Why? Because we are actually taking aim at the true narrative at the heart of what I would term statism. And to define statism is the belief that the state can just write itself a blank check that all of our asses have to pay. All right? There you go. Little long rant there.
All right. So I want to talk a little bit about this because I think it's weird about these parallels that they can kind of apply to anything. So like any response to any movement that maybe has gone off the rails or is not taking all of the factors into account could be put through this lens and dismissed, which is I think what the goal of this is. So both respond to perceived injustices or systemic biases. So I want to focus on the word systemic because I think that men's issues advocates, and I think that men's issues advocates are probably the most politicized part of the manosphere because like the PUAs and like they're just trying to find different ways to like use the current modern paradigm to like attract women. There's nothing like that has anything to do with like legislation or laws. That's just guys. And the MGTOW guys, well, they've just MGTOW'd. So like you can't put them in a box. Like they've left the box. Like they're gone. You can't shame them into submission. The only ones you can really confront with this are the people who are like, these laws are unfair. Okay. So the systemic biases that feminists complain about are largely imagined and made up. but the legislation that goes in as a result of this made up crap, like Title IX, the Dear Colleague letter, the absolute state of the welfare state, the divorce laws, the way that we handle child custody, the way that we handle false rape allegations, and the list goes on, those end up becoming systemic problems. Now, I don't think MRAs cry systemic because it's sort of like this overused term by intersectionals, but there is a systemic aspect to it because we have accepted this kind of like feminist framework that we've been living under for like the past 100 years or so. So when this person says, oh, look, they both are seeing this, they're doing a both sides thing, when one of these things is imagined and the outcome of it, like the imagined slights against women that have gone into law and policy, have become real obstacles for men. And the only place you like, if you're new to this and you're trying to figure out how that could like be observed, just look at the Black population and look at how the welfare state and all of the incentives that have been put in place has absolutely demolished their communities and families. That is something we could call systemic. But it's not something that's happening on both sides. It's something that is specifically impacting men. And the solution is not more statism. The solution is actually to remove the state from that so that men could find their proper place in their communities, raising their children in their homes, right? As one example, right? So when they talk about systemic biases, they're not only misidentifying the problem, but they're also suggesting the solution should also be systemic because these people are statists. So, well, all right. And then
another point, 2 points I wanted to make before we continue. One, pickup artists literally are enacting the one form of pro-social identity that feminists have left for men, which is to please women using their penises. All right, that's it. Like, it's astounding feminists say that patriarchy objectifies women when feminist scholarship removed all of the traditional values associated with men and left one possible avenue for a pro-social interaction with women as a man, and that is using your body to please women. Talk about objectification, huh? Like, you remove everything else, every spiritual positive quality, every emotional positive quality of men. The only thing that men can do is be pleasing sexual partners for women. That's their last positive way of being in a relationship with women. Absolutely sickening. But regardless, I just want to point out again, even the nice face of feminism, equality for me, but not for thee, there is a huge incentive. These people take money, or these institutional, you should call grifters, they take money to give the impression that they're resolving harms done to women, so inequalities that women are facing. How can you trust them to even recognize inequalities facing men when that is going to reduce their paycheck? As the NGO, the leader of the NGO, National Coalition or National Organization Against Domestic Violence, I don't remember the specific name. Her first name was Ruth, but I forget her last name. I apologize. But she said
something Berg. I don't know.
No, she said that the reason why the Amber Heard, and the Johnny Depp trial was not good for her organization was because they didn't get the donations that they usually get from high profile Me Too allegations. So it is 100% about money. And you're asking people to take a cut in their paycheck in order to recognize and advocate for men's issues. They're not going to do it. They're going to continue to use their platform to silence groups like ours that advocate for men's issues, and it's working for them. So and yeah, you're right. You started at the beginning that this presumes there's equal power between the manosphere and the femosphere. And in a previous episode, I described if the femosphere is Mount Everest in terms of power and clout, the manosphere is a yurt in terms of power and clout, except that men starting to wake up to their issues seem to have made the election not go the femosphere's way. So Yeah, that's something. That's a big thing. But keep doing it. Keep advocating for your own issues because they won't.
Why are these? Yeah, why are there people scrambling to like try to grab hold of the narrative? I think the last election really put people on notice. So, but anyway, okay. So the other thing I wanted to respond to is just briefly, both contain moderate and extreme elements. I mean, any group of any kind is going to have extremists in it. That's kind of a pointless thing to say. Both address genuine difficulties faced by their respective genders. Well, I don't know. Does feminism actually address anything, or does it complain about shit? And because like complaining is not addressing, it's just complaining. But the MRAs, I think, and I can only speak for them because, again, I don't think MGTOWs or PUAs or like red pillars are trying to like change the system. I think they're just like making do. They are MRAs are making small gains, but it is, you know, it's not easy. Like they're like it's obviously difficulties. Both sometimes define themselves in opposition to the other. I think that the thing with MRAs is so like. I don't want to find myself constantly like fighting with feminism, but the problem is that the only way that I think men's issues can be addressed is if the mythology of feminism dies first. When it does, then it's like, okay, now we all know this is bullshit. So let's talk about the real issues and try to find real solutions and have real conversations about this. And the problem is that feminism's created a mythology, a whole pantheon of false gods that are all like, you know, variations on how to worship women and how to prioritize them and how to make men expendable. And I just don't think it's any way to live your life. So,
well, I will say this: men's rights activists, I don't know if they've made a hell of a lot of movement in the laws, although apparently the Dadvocate managed to get some laws or help get laws changed. So good on her. I don't know if she identifies, probably might identify as a men's issues advocate. And I know Justin Trottier is making gains as well in terms of service for men. So there are bits and pieces moving along in defiance of the femosphere's femstar. You know, like they're always moving the femstar into position to annihilate any male issues or any incentives to deal with them.
You may fire when ready.
Yeah, you might fire. Just imagine Andrea the Hutt saying that. But we have the receipts for this as well. Like the Tin Man attempted to start up a men's issues organization, I believe in the UK. I can't tell you specifically where. Again, nuked from orbit by the femstar, the fem Death Star. You know, and I've heard countless stories of this. Justin Trottier has managed to break in and refuse to be moved, which is great. So he's continuing to push in services for men. And actually Karen has said to him, you know, part of the reason why the flack is pulled off you is because we exist, being the bleeding edge of all of this. And but regardless, there is movement, but on a personal level, what I've seen is that these issues actually have benefited individual women more than anyone. I know that sounds really weird, but I've seen women be able to maintain relationships and evolve them to the next stage because they're part of this community. And the big thing that kills relationships is resentment and expectations from women in their partners. And when they let that go and they understand that men are trying to do the best they can almost always, then their relationships improve and they're able to move on to the next stage, which is, you know, becoming a wife and mother, which is what they wanted. Like, look at Cassie J. Through her interaction with the men's rights community, she let go of the resentment and the expectations and the desire to be right that was reducing her own life satisfaction because it was introducing a combative quality, a combative note into her relationship. And because it was introducing that combative note, she never felt the security and the sense of trust necessary to, or I'm assuming here, I'm saying more of a general she, from what I've seen of all of the women that I've talked to about this. They don't have that sense of security and trust in their partner, so they don't feel like they can really have a strong enough relationship to move on to the next stage. You know, which usually for relationships is having children, and then that's corrected. And I don't know, we're seeing, at least in our community, very high rates of childbirth. So, and like I said, I think one of the big things ultimately, and this sounds horrible because I don't like this necessarily. I mean, it's not that I don't like it. It's just I don't think the focus is. But I think the things that men's rights talks about really helps women. And it really helps women because it allows them to have the best relationships they can with men. And it's the relationships with men that generally determine how good a woman's life is. No offense, ladies. Like, you can go be a part of your femtopia and marry a woman and then divorce her after she beats the shit out of you. Like, go ahead, try it. Okay, let's at least see the polarization intensifies.
All right. How polarization intensifies. Several factors have contributed to the growing divide between these movements. Media amplification of extremes. News outlets and social media algorithms tend to highlight the most provocative voices from both sides, creating distorted perceptions of what most feminists and men's advocates actually believe. Should we address this now?
Sure.
I mean, you want to? So okay. So this is you're only hearing from the most extreme voices, or whatever that even means. So first of all, my issue is that this person is deciding where the edges are at when it comes to what constitutes extreme. So I can't determine anything from that because we're not mainstream. Does that mean that we're too extreme? Normal because we're not being put in the spotlight? I don't think that's the case. I think that we're pretty I don't know. I don't want to say radical, but I don't think that I don't think this content is as agreeable.
Yeah.
As the softer sort of Warren Farrell stuff. Like Warren Farrell gets to go on, big name podcasts. He was on Dr. Phil, stuff like that. Right. So I wonder, and sometimes I think some of the more provocative voices are amplified because it can be used to color our whole side of things, right? This is why they'll promote or they'll talk about the manosphere and immediately bring up Andrew Tate and Pearl, because Andrew Tate and Pearl are the biggest names, and they're also the best examples of the straw man they'd like to tear down, even though I don't think Andrew Tate has ever advocated for a single men's issue, and Pearl isn't really that radical. I've watched her content. It's pretty milk toast in my opinion, but to these people it is extreme. Meanwhile, on the other side, no matter what feminists you're talking about, they all believe the same thing at the root, the same foundation. So it doesn't matter what their crazy views are, but is Bryony Claire, who's just basically a communist that wears panties, is that an extreme voice or a mainstream voice? Because she's pretty popular. Is the queer Kiwi? What about Hannah Cox? And the thing is, these women would probably all disagree with each other on different things, but they agree on one thing. They agree on that women have historically been oppressed by men, and it was on purpose, and men have always done it throughout history and are still doing it now. And that's really the main point. So
yeah. Well, yeah, I would honestly, I think we are more extreme because, like I say, I blame women, and I'm going to do so until we're as comfortable blaming women as we are blaming men. And I think that feminism was absolutely rancid from the start. You don't start with, oh, men they use rape and domestic violence. Where do you go from there? That's like starting at 60, not even 1 to 60. It's just starting at 60. Just boom, you're subatomically accelerated to 60 instantly. And there's nowhere else to go. It's already an a hatefully extremist position. And even the nice face, oh, we advocate for women, is still a bigoted position. Right? Because, at least I guess that we advocate for women allows for men serving women's so-called equality, but it still basically is outlining that we look at equality for women. Do you look at equality for men? Do you actually even ask yourselves, how do we know what equality is when we don't measure the side for men? No, they just look at whatever issue they can frame as disenfranchisement of women and then they construct a osmotic money pump from it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, let's
All right.
continue to the next one. I might
Echo chamber effects is the next
I got a
chapter.
feisty cat I need to deal with, but I'm listening. I'm always listening.
Echo chamber effects. Online communities can reinforce and radicalize views when people are exposed only to those who share their perspectives and grievances. Again, I don't worry about that on the men's issue side, because we have to contend with the reality of the feminist narrative being the narrative. So that puts us necessarily outside of the echo chamber, whatever that even means, so that we can address these things honestly. Feminists, on the other hand, do everything they can to avoid men. I mean, look at Blue Sky. Like, Blue Sky is getting so bad that people on Blue Sky are being driven out of Blue Sky because there's too much hatred there. So, it's way worse than X. And that's saying something. Pain and trauma. Many drawn to either movement have experienced genuine suffering related to gender dynamics, making emotional responses more likely than nuanced dialogue. Yeah, fair enough. But I mean, I don't think that dismisses people who are making rational arguments. So maybe we should listen to the arguments and not dismiss people who hurt you. I don't think that justifies. Like, I learned that Naomi Wolf, who's like who was at least a very, very prominent feminist, she did an interview or discussion with Jordan Peterson years ago. And Peterson was like, oh, I understand where it comes from, because she had this horrible experience when she was young. And he was very sympathetic. But I was like, yeah, but she's taking it out on everybody else. Like, that's not our problem. That's yours. Get therapy. Like, if you're going to be able to say, well, my daddy left me when I was little, or my mom kicked my daddy out and I never got to know him, so now I hate the world for it. Well, guess what? You shouldn't probably be listened to by people. You're probably not in your right headspace. But this pain and trauma thing, I mean, yeah, people are abused. Most people come from some kind of childhood trauma. And that they should deal with that. But again, if somebody's trying to create law and policy based on their childhood trauma, we should probably look at it rationally and decide whether or not we should listen to that person. And I think that so this can just be thrown out, because I don't really see the point of bringing it up. Identity formation. For some, identification with these movements becomes central to their sense of self, making criticism feel like a personal attack. Again, I don't think that's a problem with MRAs. I think that's a problem with feminists, because when you know this, because when someone criticizes men's issues, I've never heard an MRA say you're criticizing men. Like, they'll just be like, well, allow me to retort to the criticism you have of this issue. But when you criticize feminism, if you say I'm anti-feminist, you're presumed to be anti-woman. So that's how you know it's a personal attack. So yeah, that exists, but that's not here. That's over there. Lisa Wade, sociologist,
really
notes.
good point.
What?
That's a really good point. Like, when you do when you actually say, hey, feminists, let's look at the situation for men when you're asserting something, and don't just use feminist cook statistics. If we all agree that men have difficulty revealing sexual assault and domestic violence, let's look at the studies where they have revealed the most amount, right? And look at the comparison. Let's do that. Even when you do that, they're like, why do you hate women? It's like, what does that have to do with
I mean, like, I've been in conversations where feminists have led with, well, first of all, I'd like to know why you hate women so much. And it's like, I can't even, like, I feel sick to my stomach to even have to say, well, actually, I'm married to one, because I find that to be so disingenuous. It's not worthy of a rational response.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, we're not having a conversation anymore. You're putting me in a position where now I have to somehow justify to you that I'm not the person you just framed me out to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, you're just making a pointless ad hominem attack on me. And the purpose of that is to shut me up. It's not to have a conversation.
Yeah.
That's why I won't apologize for your perception of my opinion. Like, if you think I hate women, that's a you problem. That's not a me problem. So
exactly.
Yeah. All right. Lisa Wade, sociologist, notes, what's particularly troubling is how the legitimate concerns of both movements, both sides, gets obscured by the most extreme rhetoric. Most feminists don't hate men, and most men concerned about men's issues don't hate women. Okay.
The problem is
I mean,
that
whatever.
feminist rhetoric is already extreme. It's already extremely radical. Like, I don't know how they managed to assert this crap. And now it's everywhere in the sociology around domestic violence and sexual assault, to the point where there are people who work in those fields who are absolutely despise feminists because they're colonizing the field in order to enforce their ideological perspective of the world. And they're actually making it worse and worse and worse. There's, I think, some cities in Canada where the police have quietly tried to remove feminist theory from their guidelines around dealing with domestic violence, because feminist theory makes everything worse. It makes sexual assault and domestic violence worse and more difficult to deal with, because they're not looking at it as a issue that needs to be solved through reasonable interventions. They're looking at it as a cash grab, and they want to reframe it in a way that makes that cash grab easier and quicker, which honestly, most people respond to situations that they feel are, if you say the women are in trouble, everybody drops everything and has to save them. And then the feminists say, put up the women are in trouble banner. Everybody rushes towards it. And they say, how about you give us a bit of a tithe and we'll deal with it. Right. And we understand it because we're the experts. Right. And that's what they're doing. That's the point. But the point is, ultimately, if you remove half of the data of any particular issue, you are not going to make a solution. You're just going to construct an ideological narrative around the problem. And it just so happens that ideological narrative coincides with people coughing up more dough. Like, so right from the start, how do you find middle ground? Like, how do men find middle ground with men use rape and domestic violence to subjugate women? How do you find middle ground with that?
Yeah.
Where's the middle ground?
Yeah. I mean, you have to be like, well, sometimes they do. Like, no, I mean, like that's what I'm saying. Like, if you're launching from an awful premise, there's no, and this article is calling for, let's all like just get along. Let's all just find the middle ground here. But the problem is that the men's issues side is not straw manning women. It's not like it's not ultimately, it's not even all that concerned with women. It's mainly just looking at the areas that are, where injustice is happening, and they're looking for something that remotely approaches reason and evidence. And the feminist side is just like, it's like the worst examples, and then it takes that and makes it into the typical example.
Mm-hmm.
So now you have to like contend with that, and now they're asking you to come to the common ground of that.
Yeah, they're asking, okay, you're going to find common ground with the feminists who've already declared, like, pissed all over the territory and declared it theirs. Okay, so what's your common ground? To agree with them?
Yeah.
Don't try to find common ground with feminists, guys. Don't try to find here's a clue. If a group of people tells you that the group of people you belong to use rape and violence to subjugate women, there's no common ground to be found, right? The only common ground is to jail all men.
Yeah.
The end. Okay, let's keep going.
So, finding common ground. Despite the polarization, there are promising pathways towards more productive dialogue. Recognize shared goal. Both movements ultimately seek freedom from restrictive gender expectations. Feminists fight against stereotypes limiting women, while many in men's movements resist narrow definitions of masculinity that damage men's well-being.
And what they mean by narrow definitions of masculinity is recognizing that men have any value.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a difference between expecting men to justify their existence by sacrificing for state. But that's not like what the feminists did. Is they took an issue that men face, which is that they are expected to sacrifice in order to earn their value as men. And then they said, well, if you just sacrifice your manhood instead, then everything would be fine. If you just sacrificed any desire to be viewed as being good, that would be fine. And then also, assume the mantle of being the criminal gender that's evil and uses rape and domestic violence to engage in or uphold patriarchy. And it's not just that men are convicted of these things more, which, by the way, guys, conviction means who we are empowered to punish for their actions, who we want to punish for their actions. It doesn't mean who is actually taking those actions. Because there's a lot of sexual violence directed towards men that never, ever will see the light of day in a police station. Like they'll never be reported. But regardless, so convictions only represent the fact that men are willing to hold other men accountable. And unfortunately, it doesn't look like women really are consistently willing to hold. Otherwise, you'd think that someone like me wouldn't be universally ostracized by the sisterhood. The sisterhood would say, oh, of course, you hold other women accountable. You're a sister in good standing, because we all do that. No, instead, I seem to be target number uno for a lot of shit from the sisterhood. But anyway, let's keep going.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that one thing that I'll just say about this is that when it says many men's movements resist narrow definitions of masculinity that damage men's well-being, I think that they should be asking who is defining masculinity in this context, because it's not other men. Like, that's the thing. Like, when they'll say they want to be free from the gender restraints, and it's like, yeah, it sounds good. Then you go, well, ladies, what do you want? And the women will basically say, no, I want a big strapping lumberjack guy with a beard that works like a fucking, like has big ass hands. Like, they want a manly man. Like, there's no getting around that. You can't like come up to a woman and say, well, how about this guy that's like, he's a little on the slim side, like eats a lot of soy, and like he's really polite and kind, and and all of these other qualities. The truth is that men are not really allowed to define what masculinity is if they want to pair up with women. Like, we have to and this is what feminists have been trying to do. That's what the whole toxic masculinity thing is about. It's about trying to find a way to make men into the social man, which is basically the subservient man, the man that, works in the sort of like, stateless communist utopia, and he's very agreeable and all of that, and then pretending like women are just going to like that without ever asking women what they like. And that's the problem. It's like, it is a conundrum that can't be answered, and that's why feminists will never answer it. They'll just insist that men do it and then just pretend like women are just going to agree, when women that are regular are going to be like, I don't like that. And we've seen this over and over again. Like, this is not something that you can like make an argument against, like, oh, well, men should be liberated from that. Well, yeah, maybe, but like, the thing is that if those men want to attract a woman, that might not work for them. In fact, in most cases, it won't. So this is the thing that we have to contend with, is that women have desires.
Women's desires.
Yeah, you got to change women's desires. You got to make men desirable to women, the average man. And the problem with the feminist project is that it is not making men attractive to women if men follow those rules. And I don't think it's meant to. I think it's meant to make men disgusting to women so that they won't want to date them.
Well, I mean, regardless of the attraction, that whether or not feminism actually makes men attractive to women, it's a repulsive narrative on its face.
It is, because it means that men need to like shed that about themselves.
Yeah,
but, like, even if you accept that framing, that idea that men should be liberated from their narrow definition of masculinity, you're not accounting for the fact that, first of all, maybe it's not that narrow, so that's kind of a straw man. But the other side of it is that maybe like in that range of masculinity where men feel comfortable, it's also a place that women feel comfortable. Yeah, and maybe you're going against that.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, honestly, it just comes down to this. They don't want any recognition that men and masculinity have unique traits and unique value propositions to give women and society. Full stop. They just don't want to recognize that, because that means that women don't have those things, or at least don't have them as much. Right. And I can tell you, there's a lot of things that I'm seeing that women obviously don't have. Like, for example, some kind of innate desire to police the opposites, their own sex, for their behavior towards the opposite sex. And I know that for a fact, because if there was that desire, someone like me, who is actually policing women's behavior towards the opposite sex, wouldn't be so universally reviled. So that's one thing that men do and women don't. They're willing to hold other men accountable for their behavior towards women.
For sure, 100%.
And people are like, "Oh my God, what about Ghislaine or Gazelle, the woman in France?"
Maxwell.
Well, if it weren't for a bunch of male policemen who investigated when she wasn't even aware she was losing like 3 to 4 days a week, they investigated and they found out what was happening and they protected her. So why aren't you looking at that? The state, which is supported by men's efforts to hold women accountable, the whole justice system, protected her when she was apparently unable to protect herself because she was the type of person who could lose 3 to 4 days worth of time a week and not really notice. So, that's that. Men protected her. And if it weren't for men, this would still be happening. And believe me, if it was in a femtopia, it would still be happening, because she would have found some sexually aggressive woman to be in a relationship with, because that's the way it usually goes. You usually find the same kind of partner that you left. And that woman would be raping her unconscious body with a bunch of other sexually aggressive, like sexually monstrous women. And that would never have been found out, because there would have never been a woman, a police force, to investigate the crimes in the first place. And if she ever found out, she'd probably be more likely to be shamed by the sisterhood and be told, "Oh, you're just trying to make the sisterhood look bad." Okay, so the ultimate point of that is men engage in altruistic punishment towards other men. And this is even this is even in studies, that men are more prone towards altruistic punishment. That means sacrificing in order to uphold the laws of society, sacrificing themselves in order to uphold the laws of society. And they have an instinct towards it. And it's not something I see in women. Okay.
All right.
Running out of time.
So that's okay. Step 2, or bullet point 2, focus on research-based approaches. Grounding discussions in empirical evidence rather than anecdotes and stereotypes can help bypass ideological divides. So good luck with that. I mean, okay, when you say research-based, are you saying that we should only be citing academic papers that are like peer-reviewed and
how about not ideological?
Co-signed by feminists that already agree with each other? Like, they're all like, because that's the problem with academia, is that most of the work there is like cited by feminists and co-signed by other feminists, and other feminists write papers based on the papers that other feminists wrote, and it just goes, it's a giant circle jerk of content that all just happens to agree with itself. So if we're going to do research-based empirical evidence, then maybe we should be open to new evidence and also like analyzing the evidence presented, because like just going with whatever academia says is how we got like the Title IX and Dear Colleague Letter and Mary Koss, and and the wage gap and these other things that just won't die, these myths that just won't die.
Yeah.
So
okay, I just running out of time, so let's do it.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Acknowledge complexity. Gender issues aren't zero sum. Improvements for women aren't necessarily come at men's expense, and vice versa. Many issues like mental health stigma, family court reform, and workplace flexibility would benefit all genders when addressed thoughtfully.
Oh, isn't that? Yeah, they would, but they never will be, because that would require challenging the movement that's all about women's equality and only women's equality.
Yeah.
Okay, promote moderate voices.
Platforms that elevate, moderate, solution-focused thinkers from both movements can help counterbalance more divisive content.
You guys decide which you didn't even quote anybody from the men's rights community on this. You decide who you focus on. God, this is such a bunch of mealy-mouthed bullshit.
Yeah. Moderate. What's moderate? Like, you mean people who are like kind of feminist? Because that's kind of the problem, right? Like, you gotta bring on the guys with the softest voices that don't have like that are like more agreeable, and then you're gonna call that progress. I mean, maybe you'll make some baby steps, maybe, but I'm kind of done with the mealy mouth bullshit.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not. I'm never going to find common ground with a group of people that assert that men use rape and domestic violence to uphold society.
Yes.
Like what they mean with purpose. Like what common ground can I find with them? Oh well, I guess it's okay to jail them all for the horrible harms that they've done to the world. Just jail all men, but we can let them out on Saturdays, or we can. Where do you go with that? It's already extremism of the most foul and depraved sort.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's see what they say about the path forward.
All right. The path forward. Psychologist Terry Real suggests the most productive approach is one that holds space for both men's and women's struggles without minimizing either. We need a both and approach rather than an either or thinking. Promising examples of bridge building already exist. Organizations like Promundo work internationally to promote gender equality by engaging men and boys alongside women and girls. Their research demonstrates that programs addressing harmful masculine norms benefit everyone, reducing violence and improving relationships. Oh, weird. Only stuff addressing harmful masculine norms, eh? That's interesting. Similarly, some feminist scholars have incorporated men's issues into their analyses, recognizing that patriarchal structures hurt men too. Though through expectations of emotional stoicism, pressure to be primary breadwinners, and other restrictive norms.
Are you fucking kidding me? Do you really think emotional stoicism, pressure to be breadwinners, and other restrictive norms is worse than, hey, Johnny, you use rape to uphold patriarchy on your sister? Like, the shit that feminists say about men, getting rid of all of the positive recognition of men's traits in society, teaching generations of kids that men are boys are actually girls being suppressed by patriarchy, right? And that when boys behave in ways that aren't like girls, you can get in there and dope them up with things that are actually causing things like them to lose an inch of growth and have more psychosis, because obviously they should be acting like girls. Like, there is nothing that patriarchy has done to men except maybe conscription. All right. But really, feminists supported that with the white feather campaign. There's nothing that patriarchy has done to men that compares to the absolute loathsome shit that feminism does to men's identity when it promotes the idea that men are primarily defined by oppressing women and being criminals. Right? Okay, patriarchy is like, yeah, be a bit stoic when things go wrong in your life. Feminism's like, you want to use rape to make the world go round. Which is worse? Which is worse for men's mental health? And how do you freaking find common ground with that crap? Okay.
Yeah. All right. Conclusion. The relationship between feminism and the manosphere reflects broader tension. This is written by AI. Reflects broader tensions in a society undergoing rapid change. While some elements of both movements contribute to polarization, their core concerns often stem from legitimate experiences and grievances. By recognizing the humanity and valid perspectives on all sides, focusing on evidence-based solutions, and creating spaces for nuanced dialogue, makes me cringe, we can begin to move beyond polarization towards a more collaborative approach to gender issues. The way forward lies not in declaring one movement right and the other wrong, but in developing a more inclusive conversation about how gender affects everyone's well-being and how we might build a society that allows all people to thrive regardless of gender.
Okay, that's nice. The rebels need to just surrender their guns to the Empire and all will be well. The Empire will genuinely consider their issues. Now, I have my grab bag of nuts we can go through really quick here.
Sure.
So the first thing,
You gotta send me the links individually because you just sent me
I
like a
will send
whole
you the links
document
individually.
yeah.
So let's look at what the femosphere has been up to. Let's look at this. The Economist. Maybe you guys will notice something a little bit crazy. There you go. There's the link. I'm going to queue up the second one.
I'm bringing it up right now. Just give it a second to load. All right, here
Yep.
we go.
All
For
right.
decades, what?
No, The Economist. Go ahead.
Yeah, I got it right there. For decades, a big story on education has been the ascent of girls. They now outperform boys in most subjects, but one subject remains a problem. So wait, a problem? Oh,
Yep.
girls are still falling behind in math. So wait, women are killing it, but because boys are doing better in math, that's a problem.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to know.
Girls are
Sure.
doing better in every other subject, but the only problem one is the one in which boys are doing better. And what they're going to do is they're going to get it so that girls are doing better, and then they're going to forget the whole thing. Equality! Equality! This is what
Remember,
happens.
gender issues aren't zero sum.
Yeah, no, they're not zero sum. Oh no. We're just only going to look at the situation when girls are disadvantaged. We're never going to look at the situation when boys are disadvantaged because, you know, we got that lovely theory about how boys are privileged by patriarchy, and any disadvantage is a patriarchy hurting men too. And also, if they complain about it, it's backlash. You're not going to get anywhere with men's issues with these talking points that feminists use, and also their focus. And this is just egregious. Like it's unjustifiable. And this is the attitude of the femosphere. Right. And this is the femosphere, again, compared to the femosphere is Mount Everest and the manosphere is a yurt. Or the femosphere is the Death Star and the manosphere is a Ewok village. There's no comparison. They control media, or at least they have more significant influence in media. They have significant influence in academia. These are uncontroversial statements. You just have to look at academia. Look at the women's department. Where's the men's department? Look at the government. There's the women's organization. Where's the men's organization? Look at UN women. Where's the UN men? No, right? Look at all the stuff that's taught in schools. Do they ever teach about men's issues? They sure as hell teach about patriarchal oppression of women, right? It's everywhere. It's institutional. And the femosphere is the Death Star, and the manosphere is an Ewok village in the sights of the Death Star. And if we ever win, it's only because they come to our territory and stay stupid shit. And we defeat them easily with logic and reason and research that they haven't actually corrupted entirely. And also like logs on ropes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, don't forget the punji sticks and the logs.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's
and the song at the end and the cannibalism. I don't know.
Well, yeah, you don't know that maybe
I'm sure they ate the stormtroopers at the end of Return of the Jedi.
Their backs, you know.
Huh?
They were chiropractic. Their ritual practices involved extreme forms of chiropractic, and they were,
yeah,
you know, they were, I don't know. Okay, sorry. All right, UN women.
All right.
UN women.
UN women. Men's rights groups say they support men, but often blame #feminism for male, quote, disadvantage, end quote, framing men as victims of #equality. See how they fit into the #manosphere. And then there's a link with a definition, I guess. Let's find out if they're right. This is UN women. Men's rights activists often take an academic tone to claim that feminism and women's rights to vote, to education, to leadership positions have disadvantaged men. MRA preachers suggest society is gynocentric, that is dominated by feminine interests. Ooh,
no,
this is
we say that. Like we say that what the Economist just did, which is to say, well, girls are killing it in every single subject except math, and we need to focus on math because all we care about is girls' equality. You know, we don't look at the whole whole landscape. That's what we call out. And you don't even need to use academic rigor to do it. You just have to say, how is that equality? How are you promoting equality here?
And yeah, you're not even really ready to ask the question, what is equality? Because you're still using it wrong. So
yeah, but okay, MRA preachers. So UN women casts our side of the we're not even a side of the conversation, right? Because There is women's issues, and then there is believing that men use rape and domestic violence to uphold their privileges, which aren't the same thing. Okay, there's an ideological view of the world in which all we have to care about are women's issues because the patriarchy means that men's issues don't need to be addressed. And then there are the actual issues that women face, right? And there are actual issues that men face. Okay, and we actually can't deal with either if we're using them to promote an ideological narrative. So last one.
All right, I got a super chat. Should I read that later?
Yeah, sure.
Want me to read it now or later?
Read it now.
All right, I got Dan DeFilippo. Thank you, Dan. Gives us $10 and says, feminism has three fundamental ways it can be understood. One, party of single women. Two, women are entitled to veto power of what is permissible masculinity and not reverse. Three, women have no agency. They have all the power and yet have no power. All right. So next, thank you for that, Dan. And if you guys want to send us a message, you can do a super chat, or you can go to feedthebadger.com/just-a-tip to send us a super chow. I'm got my eyes on those in the event that they may show up. So anyway, all right, here's the next one. Of course, this is from zmescience.com. Yeah. How the manosphere is radicalizing young men.
Okay, but this is just one example of an absolute fuck ton of articles calling out the manosphere. And they're choosing, apparently, according to the Psychology Today article, there are moderate voices in the manosphere, right? But this is what they choose to focus on, how the manosphere is radicalizing young men. Radicalizing them to what? To push back on the feminist assertion that young men use rape and domestic violence to uphold patriarchy, pushing back on the feminist assertion that only ever looking at women's issues, women and girls' issues, is actually equality. Like, what are they pushing back on? And this is the funny thing. Like, we see this everywhere in the media, this kind of stuff. So what is the Psychology Association going to do about that? I mean, they're saying that both sides have a point. We both need to talk to each other. Are you going to call out the mainstream media on 100% taking a side on this? Are you going to recognize the power that they have to shape the narrative around these issues? Are you going to acknowledge the fact that, yeah, sure, we exist and we continue to exist, incidentally, because you guys support us. feedthebadger.com/support. But we exist and we continue to push back, but we sure as hell aren't privileged by any platform in terms of our message. Okay, and it's because we take aim directly at the heart of the monster, like directly at the heart of the command and control narrative at the bottom of all of this, which is feminism. Like I've said, because I call out feminism. Sometimes people are like, oh, communism. Okay, Russia was communist. Russia is now not communist. Feminist, the human race is feminist. We may not be feminist in the future because we won't be. Feminism is going to make us extinct. We can recover from communism. We cannot recover from feminism. And I don't mean equality or economic opportunities for women or not liking women being beaten. I mean narratives like men use rape and domestic violence to uphold society. How long do you think we're going to have a society when we promote that to everybody in it? How long are we going to have a future? And how are we going to get men and women together to produce babies to make that future under this kind of shit? And again, what happened was there was a bunch of feminist academics. They found a wide open field when it came to the relationship between men and women and what it means. They squatted in that field and they brought out a whole bunch of shit that has never been properly peer reviewed, never been held to any standard of rigor, and honestly was just the nastiest crap that they could possibly conceive of to pin on men. Identical in form and content to the kind of propaganda we direct against an enemy nation or enemies within our own borders. And nobody has called them out until now. And they continue to not listen to us, to ignore us. We're not invited to talk to Psychology Today. We're not invited to talk to these media outlets because they're afraid of what we have to say, because we destroy the entire underpinning of all of their bullshit. Okay. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Brian.
that's true.
Okay, so I will do the things unless Brian wants a few more minutes to do a conclusion.
Well, no, I mean, like, I think we
Covered
pretty
everything?
much got to it. I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, like, feminism doesn't have solutions. It just has goals of grasping more power and money and sort of like cementing itself. I think the reason why these articles are coming out is because they are losing men. And it's not, I know that you brought up like the Democrats spending like 20 million, but this is bigger than that. This is bigger than a political party. This is like a vibe shift everywhere, and it's men all over the world like waking up, and that's what they are afraid of. And I think that they should be, because they're going to lose control over the narrative. The myth, the historical myth of feminism is going to die, and I think that it's just a matter of time.
Yep. Hopefully. Well,
I mean, yeah, I hope so too,
die
and
or
I
we'll
know
kick
that
out
some
our
people are not as
faces.
optimistic as me, but I don't see how it can go anywhere else.
The human race has gotten through worse things. I think it can overcome feminism. And
Yeah.
again, I'm not talking about, educational opportunities for women or economic quality. Like, women have always had educational opportunities. Maybe not the same. Maybe it was different kind of education. They've always had economic opportunities. Women have always been able to find a place in a society that was reasonable. They've always
Yeah.
been able to negotiate that. From every society that I've seen, women have been able to negotiate a good position for themselves. What a surprise. They're the mothers of that society. But, what I'm talking about is explicitly the hatred. You know what? It could be indifference to men. Asserting that men use rape and domestic violence to uphold patriarchy, that could just be indifference. That could just be making alarmist statements in order to sell something. But it's still, at the end of the day, is pretty hateful to assert. So that's what I call out.
Yeah.
100%. All right. So
I got a rumble. Well, I got a rumble rant
rumble
as
rant.
well.
Okay.
Rumble rant from NovaFan21 gives $1 and says, "Remember when Chuanhead promoted communist men claiming they are positive for men? What a joke." Thank you for that rumble rant.
Can I say something about that? There's some,
Sure.
I think conservatives need to understand this, because when I talk to communist men and communist women, I get completely different attitudes. Communist women want a freebie. They want a free ride. They want someone else to do things for them. And they want more cushioning when they fuck up their lives. Like, I was just recently listening to a video where a bunch of women who have almost $100,000 in student debt are calling out capitalism about how, and I'm like listening to this and I'm thinking, you're using that word wrong. You don't mean capitalism. You mean accountability, right? You don't want accountability for your choices. And then you find out that these women who are all against capitalism are using their money to go on like European vacations and do expensive events, self-promoting events. And it's like, okay, right? Women who are communist because they want freebies. They want to have they don't want to have to make an effort or take responsibility. In my experience, and this is not true about all men, but it's more likely that when a man is a communist, he wants a purpose. He feels defeated by the confusion of the world and he wants a purpose, something to work for. It's a very different attitude. And I think maybe to really understand how to heal people from communism, you have to understand the difference. Men need a purpose. Women need a slap in Minecraft. Okay.
So basically, Nazi men are just looking for a purpose.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. As long as we're on the same page, because that's basically the same kind of statement. Doesn't make them any more wrong.
Controversial there, but yes, they're looking for a purpose.
Yeah.
Islamic terrorists are looking for a purpose. All of these men who engage in violence are using violence to find a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
They're using the monopoly of force to find a purpose.
Right. They're looking for meaning.
They're looking for meaning. And which is why, you talk about Nazis, you talk about white nationalists, but there's a lot of those men, as you've brought up yourself, that are multiple things that are self-contradictory. So they'll be like a part of, I don't know, the Islamic nation.
They'll be in the KKK for a week, and then they'll be an Islamo-fascist for a week, and then they'll be a Black Lives Matter or Antifa. Yeah, sure. No, I get it.
Yeah, and it's all because these young men have one thing, and that is the monopoly of violence that men have, and they are attempting to use that one thing to find a purpose. And we don't want that. So yes, if we could fix that, we would also fix the extremist white nationalists. We fix it all, because their purpose should be in helping create a society that is functional, comfortable, safe, and has a bit of an edge. So there's something adventurous to it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not. It's going out and destroying shit in every capacity. Every single one of the extremist narratives that have young men going out and destroying shit is exploiting the same problem, which is that young men are not finding purpose in participating in civil society. It's all of them. All right. So if you want to send a comment at any time after the show is over, you can do so at feedthebadger.com/justthetip. If you want to support us, feedthebadger.com/support. It's all in the low bar as well. And if you want to join our community, badgernation.online. It's Discord, so you got to be able to do that. Again, all in the low bar. And I'll hand it back to you, Brian, to take us out.
All right. Well, if you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Hit the bell for notifications. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today. And please, please, please share this video, because sharing is caring. Also, we are now streaming to Kick as well. So I did see a couple people in Kick. Yeah, we were streaming in Kick today. I saw a couple people say hello in Kick. So hi to the people watching. I don't know if you guys like Kick, but if you do, maybe you don't want to support YouTube, you can go and follow us on Kick. It's just Honey Badger Radio on Kick, right? So you can just check it out there. Yeah, it is Badger Live on Kick is what it is. Badger Live.
Okay, yeah. Badger Live streams or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, and please share this video, because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of Maintaining Frame, and we will talk to you guys in the next one.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.